Hospitals hide mysteries that go far beyond medicine. And these hospital horror stories prove it. Recorded voices, haunted hallways, and presences that shouldn't be there. Like in the story you're about to hear, where a simple Ouija board in an abandoned asylum changed a young woman's life forever. But before we dive into the story, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of our terrifying stories. And tell me in the comments what city or country you're watching from. I still remember the silence of that road. It wasn't just quiet. It was heavy, like something was hiding in the dark, just waiting for us to slip up. The car rattled over the poorly paved curves, and with every mile we drove, the feeling that we were heading somewhere we shouldn't only grew stronger. I was in the backseat with 3 friends, all of us laughing, trying to act brave. The whole thing had been my idea, and I didn't want to show I was already regretting it. After all, who could have guessed that a night of fun would turn into a nightmare I'd never escape? The plan was simple: explore the abandoned asylum in the next town over. Everyone had heard the stories about that place. People claimed they'd seen shadows moving, doors slamming on their own, even voices echoing through the empty halls. I didn't believe any of it. I always thought it was just overactive imaginations. But the truth was, I was chasing exactly that. The fear. I wanted to prove it was all made up, that we could turn an urban legend into an adventure with friends. The road to the asylum seemed to push us away. First, there was a dead owl in the middle of the road, its eyes still wide open, like it had seen something it shouldn't have. Then farther up, a dog's body, stiff but still fresh. That gave me an eerie chill, like a warning. I tried to joke it off, saying it was just a coincidence, but deep down, it unsettled me. And then it got worse. A thick fog rolled in out of nowhere, swallowing the road, the trees, even the car's headlights. The feeling of being surrounded by something unseen pressed down on my chest in a way I can't even describe. When we arrived, the asylum was bigger than I'd imagined. The front was covered in dead vines, the broken windows like hollow eyes, and the iron gate creaked every time the wind blew. The place felt heavy, like you could sense it. I can't explain it, but it was like some kind of dark energy had seeped into the walls. That building breathed suffering. I tried to ignore it, but the feeling of being watched was so strong that, for a second, I thought someone, or something, was peering at us from inside. We went in with flashlights and phones, filming everything to post later. The hallways were long, narrow, and cracked, the air thick with the smell of mildew and something rotten that seemed to never leave. Every step echoed, like the whole building was listening. My friends laughed and joked, but I couldn't relax. With every room we opened, the oppressive feeling grew worse. Rusty wheelchairs, dust-covered gurneys, shattered medicine cabinets. It was like time had stopped the day the last person left. That's when someone suggested using the Ouija board. I'd brought it in my backpack, more to mess with everyone than because I actually believed in it. But when I set it down on the cold floor of a large room, a shiver ran down my spine. The board felt out of place, like it didn't belong there, but at the same time, it fit perfectly with the heavy atmosphere. My friends got excited, laughing as they gathered around, each placing their fingertips on the planchette. I pretended to be into it too, but something inside me knew this wasn't going to end well. At first, nothing happened. We asked if anyone was there, laughed, and joked around. Silence was the only answer. But then, I felt the planchette begin to move under my fingers. It was so subtle I thought someone was pushing it. But everyone swore they weren't. With every question, the planchette seemed to react, always directed at me. When we asked for a name, there was no answer. When we asked if it was alone, the response was clear: no. The air grew heavier, and the feeling of being watched filled the room. I couldn't stop staring at the door, like something was about to walk in. My friends started laughing nervously, but I wasn't joking around. I could feel a presence there, something that didn't want to be revealed. I asked for the name again, but the answers were always vague. Then when I asked something personal, something only I knew, the board spelled out details no one else could have known. I froze. That's when I realized it was communicating only with me. They thought it was funny, said I had a special gift, but I didn't see the humor. The mood had shifted from fun to silent terror. What happened next still gives me chills. The flashlight started flickering, like the batteries had suddenly died. The air turned colder, and the oppressive feeling grew so strong I could barely breathe. It was like the room was closing in. I felt a strange, dense energy around me, suffocating. When I looked up, I swear I saw a shadow dart across the corner of the room. It was so fast I couldn't describe it, but it was enough to make my heart race. And yet, I stayed there, my fingers glued to the board, unable to let go. When I finally pulled my hands away, they were shaking. The others were still laughing like it had all been some sick joke. But something inside me had changed. The feeling that I'd opened a door that couldn't be closed followed me all the way home. No one talked about the session again. It was like everyone wanted to forget, but for me, forgetting wasn't an option. That night back at home, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that shadow again. I felt the icy air of that room clinging to my skin. I tried to convince myself it was just exhaustion, my imagination. But deep down, I knew something had followed me home. In the days that followed, things got worse. I had constant chills, heard strange noises at night, footsteps, whispers, and sometimes the unshakable feeling that someone was watching me from the bathroom mirror. My parents said it was stress, that I needed to rest. But how could I rest with that presence clinging to me? The first time I blacked out was in the school locker room after practice. I woke up on the floor, my teammates around me, with a metallic taste in my mouth. After that, my health spiraled. Constant headaches, nausea, a weakness that wouldn't go away. I quit training, lost weight fast, and started skipping classes. The doctors found nothing. All my tests came back normal, but I knew something was wrong, something that wasn't physical. Then came the nightmares. Every night I dreamed of the asylum, always the same endless dark hallway, and someone calling me from the depths. I never saw a face. I'd wake up sweating, my heart pounding with the feeling of having been touched. I didn't want to sleep anymore. I started staying up all night, wandering the house, drinking coffee after coffee, until one of those nights I found the Ouija board. It was under my bed. I remembered leaving it in the trunk of the car. That paralyzed me. I grabbed it, shoved it into a box, and threw it away. But 2 days later, I found an identical one under my bed. My parents swore they'd never touched it. I thought maybe I was losing it, that I'd forgotten I'd stashed another one somewhere. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it had come back. No matter what I did, it always reappeared. Or maybe I was just seeing what my mind wanted me to see. That's when I started to break. I pushed everyone away, stopped answering messages, fought with my parents, locked myself in my room with the lights off for days. I started drinking to numb the fear. And when that wasn't enough, I took pills I didn't even know the purpose of. Anything to silence the voice that wouldn't stop whispering in my ear. Sometimes it was just a word. Other times it felt like someone was breathing right next to me, always calling me, always waiting for something. There was one night I almost didn't make it. I lay on the bathroom floor with a handful of pills and a bottle of vodka, but something made me stop. I don't know if it was fear, or if it was him, the presence. In that moment, I clearly felt someone touch my leg. A cold, firm touch. And the same voice as always, now clearer, saying, "Not yet." From that point on, I knew it would never leave. I tried to get help, of course. Therapists, psychiatrists, spiritual healers, churches. Nothing worked. Every time I explained what I was feeling, they said it was trauma, depression, a nervous breakdown. Maybe it was. Maybe I really had lost control. But it wasn't just that. Because every time someone doubted me, something would happen. Lights would flicker, an object would fall off a shelf, the room would turn ice cold. People stopped seeing me after the first session. Years later, I'm still moving forward as best I can. I've never gone near that asylum again. I don't even know if it's still standing. Sometimes, on the quietest days, I hear that voice again, far away, or sometimes closer. Some mornings I wake up with the Ouija board next to my bed, and some days I wake up with marks on my arms, like someone had grabbed me hard. I've never been sure if any of it was real, or if my mind shattered after that night. All I know is that since that day, I've never been the same. That was terrifying. What did you think of the story? From 0 to 10, how would you rate it? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. What started as a dangerous game ended in a life marked by fear. But the supernatural doesn't always come to destroy, like in the next story, where an unexpected presence brings comfort in the middle of despair. The first thing I thought when I woke up in the ICU was, they're gonna shave my head. I know it sounds stupid. After everything that happened, the accident, the emergency surgery, the compound fracture in my leg, the dislocated collarbone, my face wrapped in bandages, somehow all I could think about was them shaving my head. But I couldn't speak, couldn't move a single muscle. My eyes opened and closed, but the rest of my body felt like solid concrete. It was like being locked inside myself. I heard the beeping of the monitors, the footsteps in the hallway, the muffled conversations of the doctors. I smelled the mix of medicine, dried blood, rubbing alcohol, and sometimes something even stranger, like a damp old smell, as if it were raining inside me. My head throbbed. It hurt like it had been ripped off and put back in the wrong place. But the pain wasn't the worst part. The worst part was being there, alive, trapped in a broken body, treated like I was unconscious. I heard everything, every word, including when they said they were going to shave my scalp to clean off the blood. My hair, it was stiff, soaked. I could feel its weight against the pillow, like a waterlogged rope, and every time they adjusted the bed, it felt like they were tearing a piece of me away. I lay there for hours, or maybe days. I don't know. I didn't know if it was day or night. I didn't know if anyone could hear me. I was afraid of being forgotten, afraid they'd shave my head while I was still there, still aware. But then, something happened. It was in the middle of the night. I'm sure of that, because the hospital had a different kind of silence. A funeral silence. And by then, I'd learned to recognize the sounds of the place. It was like the hallways were asleep too. The air felt heavier, colder. I had my eyes closed, trying to push away the panic that was eating me alive, when I felt a hand touch my forehead. Gentle, warm, different from the rushed hands of the other nurses. "Hey, sweetheart, you're okay. You're here with me." The voice was soft, almost a whisper. A woman's voice, mature. It had a calm tone, but there was something firm in it, like she knew exactly what she was doing. And then I felt it, her fingers in my hair, carefully, like she was untangling each knot one by one. "I'll take care of this, okay? Your hair, no one's shaving anything." She started running a soft brush through my hair. I could feel it gliding, even though the dried blood made everything stick. With every stroke, it felt like something inside me was loosening, not just in my hair, but deep down. It was like someone finally saw me, like I existed again. She didn't say much. She told me my name was beautiful, that she'd seen cases like mine before, that the body takes time, but we come back. Her voice filled the room like warm light. When she started wetting my hair, I felt the water trickle down the back of my neck. Warm, fragrant. It smelled like baby shampoo. Or maybe it was just my memory clinging to something good. I don't know how, but I cried, even without moving. The tears rolled slowly to my ears, and she dabbed them away with cotton gently. And she said, "Cry. Sometimes the soul cries through whatever way it can." After that, I don't remember anything else. I blacked out. I slept like I hadn't since the accident, and when I woke up, she was gone. In the days that followed, I slowly regained some movement. First my fingers, then my head. Finally, I managed to stutter my first words. It was an immense relief, but it came with an obsession. I had to know who that nurse was. I asked everyone. I described her voice, the way she spoke, the smell of the shampoo, even the brush. But no one knew. One nursing assistant gave me a strange look and said, "Here in the ICU, there's no one like that. And that hair washing thing, no one here did that. No one's even authorized to do something like that alone with a sedated patient." For days I searched for her, checking name tags, listening to hallway conversations, even during visits from the hospital psychologist. Nothing. I started to think I'd hallucinated the whole thing, that it was just my traumatized brain playing tricks. But then, I met an older nurse who worked the night shift. When I told her the story, she went serious. She stopped shuffling papers and just stared at me for a long moment. "You said she washed your hair in the middle of the night?" I nodded. She took a deep breath and asked, "Was she wearing a plain white uniform, no blue scrubs?" "Yes. And she had a headscarf, embroidered." The woman paled. "There was a nurse like that, years ago. She worked here in the ICU. She always took care of the patients who had no one. She was known for it, washing their hair, putting on lotion, even reading aloud." "What happened to her?" The answer came in a whisper. "She died here, on duty, sudden heart attack. They say it was her heart. But there was something about the way she looked at the sick, like she could see beyond. I'm not one to believe in that kind of thing, but when I was discharged, I asked to see the ICU records. I searched with everything I had: name, last name, date, unit. Even after insisting with 3 different staff members, nothing was on record. No file for a nurse who died in the ICU. No employee with that name. No accident during a night shift. Nothing. But I know what I felt. I know what I lived that night. It doesn't matter what anyone says. No one can invent that smell, that touch, that way of whispering like she was hugging my soul. Before I left the hospital, I asked to go back to the ICU one last time. I wanted to see the room, to say thank you. They let me. When I walked in, I felt that strange sensation in the air again, like the energy had shifted. Warm, comforting, like she was still there. I looked at the corner of the wall, near the gown cabinet, and I swear on everything, there was a single strand of hair stuck to the white tile. Long, brown, still damp. I kept it. I still have it. Some people say spirits get stuck because of tragedy. But what if some stay because of love, because of compassion? I don't know. All I know is that in the darkest moment of my life, it was that simple act, her caring for my dirty, tangled hair, that brought me back. Maybe it was just a hallucination. Or maybe she's still there, taking care of the ones no one sees, just like she took care of me. Creepy, right? That mysterious nurse might have been an angel, but in other cases, what appears in hospital corridors is anything but comforting. The story you're about to hear shows how even experienced professionals can be shaken by the unexplainable. There's no simple way to explain what happened in that wing of the ER. If it had just been me, I might have chalked it up to exhaustion, stress, or even paranoia. But when others started noticing it too, that's when things got real. Back then, I was covering the night shift at the hospital, specifically in the emergency department. The schedule was always brutal, but that week, the hospital felt emptier than usual, not because of the patients, there were always plenty of those, but because of this eerie sense of absence, too much space, too much silence in the halls. Especially in that stretch near Wing D, which was kind of isolated, with restricted access and almost always pitch black after 10 p.m. Most staff avoided walking there alone. The excuse was always time. I'll take the long way around, it's faster. But the truth was, there was this tension in the air that nobody wanted to admit. The first time I saw him was around 3 a.m. I was heading to the supply closet to grab a med kit for a patient. The hallway was deserted, just the emergency lights on, when I heard footsteps. Not an echo, not the sound of a gurney, just slow, steady steps. When I looked down the hall, I saw a man standing there facing away. Tall, thin, wearing a white coat or something like it. But something was off. He looked faded. Like when the light doesn't quite reach someone? That's what it seemed like, except the hallway was well lit. I called out thinking he was a doctor, but he didn't answer. I took a couple of steps forward, and he started walking, without turning around, until he vanished around the corner. I ran after him, turned the corner, and there was nothing. No doors, no sounds, just the cold. Not the usual AC cold. This was the kind that clung to your skin and made the hairs on your neck stand up. I went back feeling dazed. I told Amanda, the triage nurse, and she gave me this weird look. Not shocked, but more like, "Oh, you too?" She pulled me aside and said, "So you saw him, huh?" That stopped me in my tracks. She told me that 2 nights earlier, while organizing supplies in the treatment room, she felt a hand on her shoulder. Not a breeze, not a light touch, firm, like someone wanted her to turn around. When she did, there was no one there. Just the gurney behind her, pushed against the wall. After that, she refused to go into that room alone. We checked the cameras. The security guard pulled up the footage, skeptical, even laughing at us. But when he played it back, there was nothing. Literally nothing. Not even my figure in the hallway at the exact moment I saw the man. Like I hadn't been there at all. The weirdest part? The video had a glitch. A few frames were missing, as if someone had erased that snippet. After that, the rumors started. That the hallway was bad luck. That patients wheeled past it on their way to the ICU rarely came back. That it was the last breath corridor. Nobody said it out loud, of course, but it was obvious. Tech staff avoided the storage closet in that area. Doctors changed their routes. Even the security guards started asking to patrol in pairs. One night, Adrian, the biggest skeptic of us all, decided to play tough. He said he'd prove it was all nonsense. He sat in the middle of the hallway for half an hour, scrolling on his phone just to spite the ghost. When he came back, he was pale, shaking, and wouldn't say a word. All he said was that he never wanted to work the night shift there again. Days later, he requested a transfer to another department. We only found out what he saw because the security guard told us he'd found Adrian crying in the bathroom, repeating, "It wasn't human." He never explained what he meant. Over time, things got worse. The hospital started struggling to fill the night shifts. HR even tried to seal off the hallway, deactivate that section, but it was a technical area. It had to stay accessible. Their solution? Keep a light on 24/7, as if that would scare off whatever was there. It didn't work. The feeling of being watched, the sudden cold, the sound of footsteps when no one was there, it all kept happening. One night, Renata, fresh out of residency, was in charge of meds. She didn't know the story. She went into Wing D and took a while to come back. When she did, she was pale, gripping the vial too tight. She said she'd seen a man standing in the corner of the room staring at her. She thought he was a patient, but he vanished right in front of her, like smoke. She was in shock, asked to leave her shift and never wanted to step foot in that room again. With each new account, the legend of the man in the hallway grew. Some said he was a former patient. Others swore he was some kind of guardian for those about to die. They started saying that when he appeared, it meant someone in the department would die that night. And strangely, every time someone claimed to see him, a death followed within hours. Coincidence, maybe, but nobody wanted to risk it. People began to think of the figure as a kind of residue, like a manifestation of all the suffering that had piled up in that space. A spiritual presence with no body, but one that left its mark. There were nights when the heart monitor would suddenly blare for no reason. Patients would say they saw a man standing in the doorway, watching them, but when staff entered the room, there was no one there. One of the cleaning ladies, Ms. Lucia, tearfully confessed she'd heard someone whisper her name while she was mopping the hallway floor. She'd worked there for 15 years, knew every inch of the hospital. She wasn't the type to spook easily, but that night she dropped her bucket and left. Said she'd never set foot there again after sundown. The story only found some kind of ending, or at least a pause, after a priest was quietly called in by one of the supervisors. He went in, said a quick prayer, sprinkled holy water in the corners, and left without a word. Didn't talk to anyone, didn't explain anything. But in the weeks that followed, the atmosphere felt lighter. The hallway still gave people the creeps, but the phenomena stopped, at least for a while. Then, on a rainy pre-dawn morning, when the hospital was dim from a partial power outage, I heard it again. The footsteps, exactly like the first time. And there he was, in the same spot, the same way, standing, watching me. Only this time he turned his head and smiled, terrifying. And when fear spreads through everyone, It feels like the entire hospital is hiding something, but sometimes what shows up isn't just a shadow. It's a figure from the past, carrying pain and secrets that still demand to be revealed. But before we continue, if you've made it this far, it means you're enjoying the stories. So hit that like button to let YouTube know you love this kind of content, and so you won't miss any more horror stories. There was a camera pointed right at my face, wires taped to my scalp, another stuck to my chest. The mattress creaked every time I shifted, and the damn lamp never fully turned off, no matter how many times I asked. It was the 5th night of monitoring. Sleep had become a luxury, eating a challenge. I was there to investigate a rare form of epilepsy, and the protocol was strict. Sleep deprivation, partial fasting, suspended medication, and 24/7 observation. I couldn't leave until they were sure what was wrong, and if possible, until they triggered a seizure while the cameras were rolling. The first night was fine. The second, weird. By the third, things started getting really strange. Time felt scrambled. Sometimes I'd blink and swear someone had messed with the wires. Other times I was certain someone had called my name. But when I looked around, there was no one there. The TV in the room was set to turn off automatically, but one night it turned on by itself. Blue screen, volume blasted. By the time the nurse came in to check, the room was silent again. She thought I'd dreamed it, and I wanted to believe that too. It wasn't until the 4th night that I saw her. I was drifting off despite the light and the built-up insomnia. When I opened my eyes again, there was a nurse standing beside my bed, not one I'd seen during the day. Her uniform was different, long white with gold buttons and a red cross embroidered on her square cap. She was immaculate, perfectly put together, but something about her seemed out of place, like she'd stepped out of an old photograph. She didn't say a word, just looked at me. Her eyes were sad, hollow, like they carried a pain that never faded. It reminded me of my grandmother after my grandfather died. That exhausted look of someone who doesn't expect anything more from the world. At first I thought it was another hallucination, but her scent lingered in the air, a faint lavender perfume mixed with the antiseptic smell of an old hospital. And when she touched my arm to adjust the monitor wires, I felt it. Cold. Not the chill of the AC, but a deep, unshakable cold, like a shiver with no cause. The next morning, I casually asked the nursing tech if the hospital still used uniforms like that. She laughed, said it was something out of a movie, that no nurse had worn anything like that since the early 1900s. After that, she started appearing almost every night, always silent. Sometimes she'd sit in the armchair. Other times she'd stand in the corner near the door. And occasionally she'd come closer, adjusting the wires like she was still on duty. She never threatened me, never really scared me, but her presence was heavy, like the air in the room grew thicker, harder to breathe. I noticed she drew nearer whenever I was on the verge of a seizure. I wouldn't fully convulse, but I'd feel the symptoms, the aura, the mental fog, that strange detachment from my own body. And she'd appear, every time, like she knew. One night I couldn't sleep at all. I stared at the camera, the two-way mirror, the blinking lights of the machines. And then, without warning, she was there right beside me. For the first time, she spoke. "You're going to be okay. I'm here." Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. But it was real, not in my head, in the room. I didn't answer, just stared. I tried to save her," she continued, as if confessing. "She was just a child. I never should have left her alone." Then she vanished, dissolved right in front of me like mist in the sunlight. And as absurd as it sounds, I felt sorry for her. I felt her pain like it was my own, an old, heavy guilt, a sorrow with no escape. The next morning, I asked the hospital psychologist to visit. I mentioned the nurse, trying to sound skeptical. She said it was common for sleep-deprived patients to have vivid experiences, even hallucinations, that the brain fills in the gaps with distorted memories. She told me to stay calm, but deep down I knew it wasn't just in my head. On the last night of monitoring, everything intensified. I'd been teetering on the edge of a seizure for hours, sweating, shaking, gasping for air. The nurse appeared again, but this time she was different. Her uniform was stained with blood, her face streaked with dried tears. She knelt beside me, took my hand and said, "I can't fail again. Not with you." I tried to speak but couldn't. Everything went black. I heard a loud ringing, then a snap inside my head, and then nothing, like falling into a bottomless pit. Later I learned my heart had stopped for a few seconds. The sensors caught it all. The real nurses rushed in, revived me, stabilized me. When I came to, weak and disoriented, I asked about the nurse in the old uniform. No one knew what I was talking about. They said only the usual staff had been in the room, that none of them matched my description. After the episode, I was discharged. The report confirmed the type of epilepsy and outlined treatment, but what stuck with me was the feeling that someone no longer of this world, had helped bring me back. I did some digging on my own. Found out the hospital was founded in 1897. Buried in the old records was a story about a nurse who worked in the pediatric ward. One night during her shift, a child died because of a medication error. Some say she disappeared after that. Others claim she took her own life in the hospital basement where the neurology department is now. What I saw, what I felt, it can't be explained by medical reports or diagnoses. But I know, that presence, that woman, she just needed one last chance to do things right. And when she did, she moved on. I've never seen her since, but sometimes I catch a whiff of lavender in the air, faint, fleeting, and I remember the cold touch of the hand that held mine when my heart stopped. People talk about spirits like they're always terrifying, but not every spirit comes to scare. Some linger because they still have something to do, something left undone. And sometimes they just need one final mission. So creepy. What did you think of the story? From 0 to 10, how would you rate it? Drop your opinion in the comments below. The first thing I saw when I woke up was the white ceiling. Still, cold, and one of those fluorescent lights humming softly, like a reminder that I was still here. Alive, but broken. The heart surgery had been a success, according to the doctors. But success is a strange word when you wake up with chest pain, a foggy mind, and a tube stuck up your nose. It took me a while to figure out where I was. ICU, 6th floor. Bed 18. Every beep from the machines anchored me to reality, and every sound from the monitor seemed to decide whether I'd stay or go. The place smelled like antiseptic, and the temperature always felt 2 degrees too cold to handle. There was a clock on the wall, but time never seemed to move. The first few nights were a mix of delirium and clarity. I drifted in and out of sleep like I was floating between worlds. Sometimes I dreamed of voices calling my name. Other times I felt like someone was sitting at the edge of my bed, watching me. But what stuck with me most was when that nurse showed up. It was the middle of the night. I woke up sweating, my chest hurting, struggling to breathe. Before I could even hit the call button, he was already there. Tall, dark-haired, his scrubs crisp, his badge unreadable. His hand was steady but gentle. He adjusted my pillow, checked the wires, and spoke in a calm voice. "Just relax. I'm here." In that moment, I felt a peace I can't explain. Like everything around me had stopped, and I slept. The next morning, I asked the nurses who he was. I described his face, his voice, everything. They exchanged a strange, restrained glance. The older one said, "You're still on morphine, right? Hallucinations are common in the first few days." But it wasn't a hallucination. I remembered his gestures, his presence. I remembered his hand on my shoulder. And it wasn't like the delirium. It had been real. The next night he came back. He didn't say much, just stood there, watching the monitor beside me. And once again, I slept with this deep sense of safety. But that same night, I saw something else. There was a shadow in the corner of the room. Fixed, dark, darker than the rest. I could see it even in the dim light. It didn't move. It didn't make a sound. It just stood there, staring at me, The next day, I didn't mention it to anyone. Not the nurses, not the doctor, but I started paying attention. Every time the nurse appeared, the shadow vanished. Every time he left, it came back. On the fourth day, I asked for my voice recorder. I said it was to keep a recovery journal. No one thought it was odd. They placed it on the table beside me, fresh batteries and all. And that night, I left it recording. I woke up again with that feeling, like someone had leaned close to the bed. But when I opened my eyes, it wasn't the nurse. It was the shadow. Closer now, more defined. Almost like the silhouette of a hunched person, head bowed. The air pressure shifted. The room felt heavy, thick. I pressed the call button, but no one came. When I finally managed to shout, the door flew open, and a nurse rushed in. But the shadow was already gone. The next morning, I listened to the recording, and to this day, I don't fully understand it. The first few minutes were just the sound of my breathing. Then, a whisper. Low, raspy, like someone speaking right into the mic. "You shouldn't be here, he's protecting you." I stopped the recording right there. I was shaking. This couldn't just be delirium. It couldn't be. I played the audio for a tech who did my routine tests. She listened, looked at me, and said as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "Happens a lot around here. After surgery, some patients become more sensitive. Doors left ajar, you know." I became obsessed. I started recording every night. I wrote down everything I saw, everything I felt. The shadow began to move. At first, it just changed position. Then it crept closer to the bed. Once, I thought it was going to touch me. And every time the nurse appeared, the shadow disappeared, like he was blocking it. On the sixth night's recording, besides the whispers, another voice answered the first. Softer, feminine, it said, "Not yet, he has to go back." I stopped eating properly. I barely slept. The staff thought it was anxiety, but I knew. I was in the middle of something not of this world, and I didn't understand why. Then, one night, as I stared at the shadow, it started to move. Slowly, like it was oozing down the wall. It came closer. The room turned ice cold. My body froze, my breath failed me. But just before it could touch me, a light appeared. Not from the lamp, not from the window. It was warm, soft, glowing from the opposite corner. And from that light, a figure emerged. I couldn't see its face. But the feeling was instant relief. The shadow recoiled. And for the first time, I heard a cry. Not loud, but full of pain. The next day, I felt different, like some of the weight had lifted from my chest. I told the doctor I'd seen things. She listened respectfully, though she didn't quite believe me. All she said was, "Some people believe that between life and death, certain doors open. Maybe you walked through one." 2 weeks later, I was discharged. I went home with a list of restrictions and a bag of meds, but I took the recorder with me. I listened to every file over and over. Some voices started repeating phrases. One of them said, "I'm your grandpa, kid. Everything's all right now." I never told my family. They'd think I was crazy, but I recognized that voice. It was his. Now, months later, I'm doing okay. I've regained my strength. I'm back to work, walking in the park, grabbing coffee at the corner diner. But sometimes when I wake up in the middle of the night, I get the feeling he's still there. The nurse. I'm not afraid anymore. Because now I know that even when we're on the edge, someone's looking out for us. And not every shadow wants to take us. But some do. That's why I keep the recorder on my nightstand. Always on. And after all these experiences, this story makes it clear that it's not always easy to tell who came to help. And who's just watching from the dark. If you made it to the end, write Ghost Nurse in the comments, just so I know you stayed with me until the finish. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any chilling tales. And hit that like button if these stories resonated with you. If you want to stay in the same eerie mood, there's another video right here with more terrifying stories. Click it and keep going with me.